Alright. So again, tomorrow you got a test on SOL 6. These are some of the key things that I think that you guys are going to need. Can y'all see your study guide finds the light off? Alright. So in SOL, I think we'll turn the light on. In SOL 6, go to SOL 6 in your study guide. Okay, it's about the third or fourth page in there. Okay, starts with 6A. Just to review the key things that you need to know from 6A. Okay, 6A. The first thing that you had, I wasn't here the day you went over this, was the legislative branch. Okay? The key things that you need to know about the legislative branch are you need to know the structure, which is easy. You know why it's easy? Because it's on the wall. Okay? The answer is going to be on the wall. And you need to know the powers. Okay, you need to know the structure and the powers. This chart will be on the test tomorrow. You will have a chart that looks just like that. You got two boxes down here. One of these boxes will be blank. Okay, the other two will probably be filled in. And you'll have to fill in what needs to go in the blanks. What goes in this blank? Congress. Okay, and then these two are interchangeable. Doesn't matter which one goes in what, but what goes in one of these boxes?
House of Representatives.
Okay, the House of Representatives. And then the other one?
The Senate.
The Senate. Okay, that will be on there. You'll need to know that. It shouldn't be too hard because, again, you have my chart right here on the wall to look at. I do not cover the chart up. It'll be up there. Okay, and there is a word for that. What's the word for two houses?
Bicameral.
Bicameral. That will be on the test. Two houses. Okay? So you need to know that about the legislative branch. Then you need to know the powers of the legislative branch. What are the jobs? And there were 6 of them in your 6A notes.
Make laws.
Hold on. The main job?
Make
laws. You need to know that one. That one is very important. Okay, that's the main job of the legislative branch. Okay, the main thing they do is make laws. What's another job?
Approve budget.
Approve budget. Okay, hold on, we got all these up here.
I just noticed you're recording.
Approve budget. What else?
Confirm presidential appointments.
Confirm appointments. Okay, what else? Tax.
Regulate trade.
Trade.
And declare war.
And then the last one, declare war. Okay? All right. Those are what you need to know from the legislative branch. Okay? You watched the video that I did on the legislative branch. Those are the key things that you need to know on the legislative branch. I don't think anywhere on the test will it ask you, I don't know for sure, but I don't think it asks you how many representatives there are. Okay? There is one other thing I do need to go over though. How many representatives are there?
435.
There are 435. How many senators are there?
100. That's
Okay.
530.
There are 100. You don't need to know how many there are total. There is something else that you do need to know about the House and the Senate. How do we determine the number of people in the House?
Based on population.
Population. Okay, it's based on population. I know it's all sort of jumbling together. Okay, population. How do we determine the number of senators?
There's 2 per state.
Everybody has 2. Okay, so in the Senate, I gotta spell equal, right? They are equal. Okay, there are 2. That's what you need to know about the legislative branch. All of that's kind of displayed for you on the study guide. Okay? That's the most of the branches. Alright, so now if we look at the executive branch, not as much. Okay? You need to know the structure, which will not be hard because again, it's on the wall, and know the powers. The structure of it, what's at the top?
President.
President.
Vice President.
Hold on. Below the president,
Vice President.
vice president. And then at the bottom, again, all this is on the chart. You need to know what all 3 are at the bottom. So you got the president, Then the vice president. Then you have cabinet,
Agencies and regulatory groups.
agencies,
Regulatory groups.
and regulatory groups. Okay? Those are the parts or the structure of the legislative branch. Okay? Again, not too hard because it's on the wall. You'll be able to look up there and get any help you need off of that. For SOL 6, it's not that hard, but when we get into SOL 7 and SOL 8, okay, and we start to add Virginia and the local government to it, it gets a little easier when you can look up there and use the chart. Powers of the executive branch. What's the main power?
Enforce laws,
Enforce.
execute, or carry
You can
out.
also say it is execute
Or carry out
or carry out
the laws.
laws. Okay? That's the main job of the executive branch. Now, I think you got a couple of them there according to your study guide as well. But enforce, execute, carry out the law. Every branch has a main job in relation to the laws. Legislative makes the law, executive enforces, executes, or carries it out. What else can the executive branch do?
Prepares and makes the budget.
Prepares budget. Prepares means to make budget.
Appoints cabinet officers.
Appoints,
Cabinet officers,
And
federal
federal
judges,
judges
and
and
ambassadors.
appoints cabinet, judges,
And ambassadors.
and ambassadors.
And then administers federal.
Okay. And then the last one says administers federal bureaucracy.
We need to know
Administers
that one.
bureaucracy. I don't think there's anything on the test tomorrow about that. That just means that the president is in charge of enforcing laws, executing laws, and kind of running the executive branch. Okay? So don't worry too much about that one right there. Definitely know this one enforces the law.
And prepares to make budget.
And then, these will get more into detail when you get to the checks and balances here in just a minute for 6B. Okay? The good thing about a lot of this is when you get asked a question on a test, it won't just give you one power. The question might say, which branch of government can enforce the law, prepare the budget, and appoint cabinet members? It'll give you multiple powers. So if you know one of them, you know all of them. Okay? If you know the president enforces the law, it doesn't matter what the rest of the question says. You see enforce the law, I know that's executive, I know the answer is executive, and you answer it. Or when you go back to the legislative branch, it might say which branch of government makes the law, can declare war, and approves the budget. Well, you may not know who approves the budget, but you might know who makes the law, so you know the answer is legislative branch. Okay? I believe that's all you really need to know on the executive branch. President, all the other parts, and the jobs. Alright? And then the last branch is the judicial. A lot easier here. Structure and powers. Okay? All that you have to know right now about the structure is what court is at the top.
Supreme Court.
The highest court we have is the Supreme Court. Right now, all that you have to know is below that, there are lower courts. We will get more into detail with that when we get to another SOL. I know my chart up on the wall has a lot more than that. All you have to know is that right there, right now. Supreme Court at the top, and then there's lower courts. We'll talk about those lower courts later. What's the power of the judicial branch?
Interpret the laws.
Interpret laws. That has a name. What's the name of their power to interpret the laws?
Judicial review.
Judicial review. They have the power of judicial review.
Does somebody unplug your smart TV every night?
Yep, the janitors do.
Why?
I don't know.
They're not supposed to.
I know, because they won't turn off. I wait on YouTube now.
Yeah, I know, but they said not to.
I know.
You blame it on me, is what you're saying. What'd you say?
No, it's janitors do it. I said,
Oh,
you're on YouTube. I'm recording my lesson, so you're on. Everybody say hi to Miss House.
Hi.
Oh, I didn't know.
No, I'm just kidding. I record all my stuff now. Put it in.
Oh, okay.
So.
Well, we need to tell him not to.
Yeah, I think
Because
because Destiny's been getting up to us
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we need to change not to because it's supposed to read,
Yeah,
or, you know,
yeah,
continuously update.
yeah.
Well, I missed one.
Alright, so interpreting the law, judicial review, okay? And the power of judicial review allows the courts to decide if laws are constitutional
Or unconstitutional.
or unconstitutional. Okay? So that's really all you have to know right now about the judicial branch. It's headed by the Supreme Court, it's the highest court, there's other courts. Okay? The job of the Supreme Court is to interpret the laws. That has a name, it's called judicial review, and that means the Supreme Court can decide if laws are constitutional or unconstitutional. Anytime you see this word right here, constitutional or unconstitutional, you should automatically know the answer is going to involve what branch?
Judicial.
It's going to be the judicial branch. Okay, any questions about SOL 6A?
No.
One other thing you might need to know, where do we find all of this information? Where do we find the structure and the powers of the judicial? Where do we find the structure and powers of the executive? And where do we find the structure and powers of the legislative branch? Where is all of that found?
6A.
No, it's in 6A, yes.
It's,
But where does people who are not in this class find it? If I want to know what the structure and the powers of all of these branches are, where would anybody look to find the structure and powers of this?
In the Constitution.
In the Constitution. All of that is found in the Constitution. Okay? Every bit of that is found in the Constitution. Okay? That's how we know we have a Congress. That's how we know we have a president. That's how we know we have a Supreme Court. The Constitution tells us. How do we know Congress can make the law, the President can enforce the law, and the Supreme Court has the power of judicial review?
Because the Constitution tells us.
It's in the Constitution. Okay? So that's 6A.
you know, you can cut
Okay.
that part of Miss Housen's out, right?
Alright, now let's go look at 6B. Okay, 6B. So look in your study guide now at 6B. 6B, we have checks
And balances.
and balances
Separation of.
I'm late, sorry.
and separation of powers. Okay, these were the two things that we talked about in 6B. Okay, these two things combined together, we have these in the Constitution for one main reason. What is the main reason we have this in the Constitution?
So that no branch abuses its power.
So no one can abuse its power,
Or become too strong.
abuse power, okay?
So it don't become too strong.
Or that it does not become too strong, or I think in the study guide it says too powerful. Okay? We did not want any branches to become too strong or too powerful or abuse their power. So we gave each branch a way to limit the powers of one another.
You want
Okay?
to equal.
Separation of powers basically means we divide them up. Okay, we divided powers up. Okay, we divide powers. There are powers that each branch has. Checks and balances is where we can limit each other. Okay? So just kind of keep that up, kind of keep that separate. Most time this stuff goes together. Okay, we think checks and balances, separation of powers is kind of the same kind of mindset there. But like separation of powers would kind of be like, for separation of powers, you've got the legislative, okay, and it has powers. You have the executive, and then it has its powers, and then the judicial, and it has its powers. Okay, so they're all separated. Checks and balances, okay, are where you've got the legislative here, you've got the executive here, you have the judicial here, and then there is something that the legislative can do over the executive.
Overrides the veto.
Okay, hold on. There's things that the legislative can do over the judicial. There's things that the executive can do over legislative. Things that the executive can do over judicial. And then there are things that judicial can do over legislative and over executive. Okay? Now I have a tough time listing all of these up here where you can read it. Okay? But let's go through them just so I know I've gone over them and I'll try to make a little note. What are some things that the legislative branch can do to the president?
Override veto.
Okay, okay, hold on. I can't write them all down at the same time. Override vetoes. Okay? And as we said, it's hard to do. You gotta get 2/3 of a vote. Okay?
Impeach the
You don't have to know that, but just know that, you don't have to know the percentage, just know that they have to override. Okay? Impeach,
The president.
okay, the president. That's a big one. They can remove the president from office if they feel like they need to charge him with something and then remove him. What else?
Approves budgets.
Approve the budget. Okay, they have to approve the budget. The president makes it, then they have to approve it. And then the last one,
And the last one was approve the president.
approve appointments. And again, that means anytime the president picks someone to take a job, they have to approve it. Okay? Now again, here, this is going to be a little bit easier on the test than that quiz was that I gave you. On that quiz, you had to tell me who had power over who. Typically on a test, you might just be asked, which branch of government has the power to impeach the president? Well, which branch has that power? The legislative. Okay? Or you might be asked, which of the following answers is an example of the legislative branch having power over the executive? And you'll be given a list of answers and you have to pick one that's from that right there. Okay? What can the legislative do to the judicial?
Approve
Approve judges
Approve judges,
and can
impeaches judges.
okay, and impeach judges. Okay? They vote yes or no to them, or they can kick them out of office and remove them. Okay? What can the executive branch do to the legislative? There's about 4 things.
Veto
Veto
laws.
Okay, veto,
propose
Proposed laws.
propose laws, and we talked about that again in SOL 6D. We'll look at that again. Propose laws,
and can
And
call
special session,
call Congress into special
session, and one more, wasn't there?
That was all.
That was it?
Yeah.
They'll make the budget? Was that in there?
No,
No.
nope, that wasn't in there.
Okay.
What?
I think it's in your notes, but it's not in the study guide.
Yeah.
I think that prepare the budget is in your notes. Prepare budget. Again, the president prepares it or makes the budget, and then it goes to Congress to be approved. That way nobody can, get too powerful and abuse their power. What can the executive branch do over the judicial branch?
Appoint federal judges.
Appoints the judges, which means the president gets to pick the judges. Okay? What else?
That's all.
No, there's one more in your notes. You may remember. President has the power to change a sentence or get somebody out of jail if he wants to. Y'all remember what that's called? Starts with a P, ends in Arden.
Pardon.
Pardon. Yeah, he can pardon the president, or he can pardon people who've been put to jail. If the judicial branch puts someone in jail, the president has the power to pardon them and kind of get them out. All right, and then the last thing, the judicial branch, which was the easier of the ones. Okay, the judicial branch was the easiest. Okay, because the power has the same word in it. What can the judicial branch do over the legislative?
Can declare laws and actions unconstitutional.
Laws unconstitutional. And what can they do over the president?
Can declare laws and executive actions unconstitutional.
Actions unconstitutional. Anytime you see that word unconstitutional, you automatically know that that is a judicial branch power. So if you see that on the test, and it says which branch can do whatever and declare it unconstitutional, when you see that word unconstitutional, you automatically know judicial branch. Okay? So that's 6B, checks and balances. Now, there will be some questions that go over just the definitions. Okay, that go over just the definitions. Why do we have checks and balances, separation of powers? To keep anyone from becoming too powerful. But then you'll also have some questions where you have to know the specific examples. And like I said, this will be easier on the test than my quiz was. You may just be given a question of, who has the power to veto laws?
The
And you know the answer is there's veto. Who has that power?
Legislative.
No.
Executive.
Executive. Or you might be asked, who does the president have the power to veto laws over? And then you just know the answer then is legislative. Okay? Or you might be asked, what is a power the executive branch has over the legislative branch? And you'll be given some answers, and you have to pick one of those that's there in purple. Okay? So that's 6B. Alright, let's look at 6C. If I can get the page here. 6C.
Legislative power.
6C. We have legislative powers. There are two.
And how bills become law.
Expressed.
And implied.
Okay.
Implied.
Express powers. We'll look at the express ones first. What's the simple definition of express powers? Powers
Found
That
in
are
the
in the
Constitution.
Constitution.
powers
And Constitution.
that are found. Oh, I got it. Found in the Constitution. That might be the key part of it for express powers. In the Constitution. They are found in the Constitution. Okay? Expressed. Examples. You may have to know some examples.
Like the power to declare war.
Declare war. Okay? Is a express power. Okay? We write that. Declare war. Tax is an express power. Trade. Okay? Those are all express powers that are in the Constitution. Okay? So make sure you know that. Express powers in the Constitution. They are expressed in the Constitution. Then we've got implied. Implied are not in the Constitution. Okay? They're not in the Constitution, but are needed to carry out expressed powers. Okay? These are not listed in the Constitution, but they are needed to do some of these things. Okay? One of the express powers is Congress can create an army. Well, an implied power would be that Congress can also spend money on weapons and develop weapons. Weapons is not in the Constitution, but it is implied that if you're going to have an army, they need weapons. Okay? So you got to know expressed and implied powers. Next thing you need to know, how a bill becomes
A law.
a law. I'm just a bill, Capitol Hill. Step number 1.
Bill is introduced.
Introduced. Okay? Introduced. Step number 2.
Sent to committee.
It goes to committee. Step number 3.
The bill is
Debated.
debated.
Debated. Step 4.
Voted.
Voted on. Okay, now stop right there. Okay, those are the first 4 steps. What we'll have to know, and again, I don't think it's on now, but it will be in the future, is these 4 steps
Have to go through
get
both.
repeated. We then go to the other house. Okay,
Introduce.
okay, goes to the other house, and then we repeat
And then.
numbers 1 through 4. So steps 1 through 4 go through twice. If this is the House of Representatives, we go through 1 through 4, then it goes to the Senate, and they do 1 through 4. If this is the Senate, and they do 1 through 4, and then it goes to the House, and they do 1 through 4.
And then you
If both houses get through steps 1 through 4, we go to step 5,
get
Which is
president.
go to the President
to get signed.
to be signed. If he signs it, it becomes a law. If he doesn't sign it, it can still be a law by overriding. Okay? I had a saying for you to help you remember this. Ice, cream,
double vanilla, please.
double, vanilla, please. The first letter, ICDVP,
Introduced.
ICDVP. Introduced, ice, committee, cream, debated, double, voted, vanilla, president, please. Okay? So know those steps. That will be on the test, I promise. Okay? You'll have to know. I mean, there's going to be stuff from everything on the test tomorrow. But I know that for sure in some way will be on the test. Okay? Now, the other thing I was talking to you about is SOL, or it goes with that I said normally I go on the SOL 9 for, is you do need to know that people have a say in laws. Okay? People do have a say. We can make phone calls and things like that. We get more into detail with that in SOL 9. So I'm going to kind of take those questions out and save those for after we get through SOL 9 and look at the what we can do and what interest groups can do. We talked a little bit about it, but I'll save those questions for once we cover all the details. Okay? The only other thing that you need to know from 6C is why does Congress write laws? Why do they write laws?
So
To fix
fix the
To fix
community.
problems
And
and issues. We write laws to fix problems and issues. We got a problem, we need to fix it, well, let's make a law. We can fix it. Okay? And there's actually one other thing from 6C. Okay? Can Congress do everything that it wants?
no.
No, they cannot do everything they want. There's one key word. Congress is
Limited.
limited. There are limits on what every branch can do. Okay? That goes all the way back to SOL 2A. In SOL 2A, we see we have limited government. There are limits. Any questions on 6C?
No.
Alright, now let's look lastly here at 6D. Okay, 6D. Let's pick another color. What color? Pick a color.
Teal blue.
Teal blue. Okay, so that's about right there. Alright. 6D. Okay? 6D we talk about the president can do to impact the laws. Okay.
Executive branch roles and laws.
What?
Executive branch roles and laws. That's
Yeah,
set up for
how the executive branch can do things with the laws. He can do 3 things with the laws to influence them. One thing he can do is he can propose laws.
in the state of the union.
Okay? And when does he do that?
In the state of the union.
He does that at the state
of the union.
of the union address. Okay, he does it every year, usually in January, February, makes State of the Union address where he proposes laws. President can approve
Appeals to the
or, veto laws. Okay? If he likes them, he signs them. If he doesn't like them, he vetoes them. Okay? Number 3 is you guys are getting ready to say he appeals
to the people.
to the people.
Officials.
Hold on. Appeals to the people. What does he use to appeal to the people? Starts with an M. Ends in idia. The media. He uses the media. He goes on TV. He talks to the American people. He lets them know what he would like to see done, and then he hopes the American people can talk to the legislative branch and get laws passed that he's in favor of, or the president's in favor of. Okay? So, the president proposes laws in the State of the Union. He can approve or veto them. He appeals to the people through the media. What else does he do? Anything else?
He
Yeah,
appoints
one more.
officials who carry out the law.
He appoints
Officials who carry out the law.
officials who carry out laws. Okay? He gets to pick people who help him carry out the laws. He picks cabinet leaders. Okay? He picks leaders of agencies and groups to help him carry out the laws. Again, those people have to be approved by who?
The president.
No, he picks them. They have to be approved by Congress. They have to be approved by Congress. Okay? I think that's all for that. Yep. And then the last thing we looked at are the roles
Of the president.
of the president.
There's like 7.
And there are 7 of them. Okay?
Chief of
So
the
listen
state.
up. You got Chief of State.
Ceremonial head of the government.
Okay? That means he's the ceremonial head
Of the government.
of government. Again, he issues medals of honor and things like that to people. He's the leader of our government. When he does those things, he's called Chief of State.
We have a
Okay?
chief of executive.
Chief of State. Chief Executive,
Head of the executive branch.
head of
Executive branch.
executive branch. He's the leader of the branch. He's over the vice president, he's over the cabinet, he's over his agencies. Anytime he has a cabinet meeting and he meets with his cabinet members, he's their boss. That's chief executive. He's doing executive work. He's chief executive.
Chief legislator.
Next is chief legislator.
Proposes of laws on the legislative agenda.
He is the leader of proposing
Of
laws. Okay? He's not the head of the legislative branch. Okay? He's the head of the executive. What he is he is the leader in proposing laws. Okay? He gives the legislative branch ideas. Next was commander-in-chief.
Yes.
Commander.
Head of the military.
Head of the military.
Chief.
So it can like be armed or whatever.
Head of military. Anytime we go to war, anytime we need to use the military, the president makes those decisions. When he makes those decisions, he's playing the role of commander-in-chief. Next was
Chief diplomat.
chief diplomat,
Leader of
Foreign policy.
foreign policy. Anytime he meets with leaders of other countries or he travels to another country to meet with their leaders, he's playing the role of chief diplomat. Okay, so get some of these are on the test tomorrow. There's one I want to make sure I definitely go over. It's chief legislator.
Chief of the party.
Next, chief of party.
Leader of his or her political party.
Chief of party. Leader
Of his or her
of political
party.
party. Whatever party the president is a member of, he or she becomes the leader of that party. If the president's a Republican, the president's the leader of the Republican Party. If he or she's a Democrat, then they become the leader of the Democrat Party. One thing I didn't go over on that one with you guys yesterday is one of the roles the president does in that regards is this. Let's say the president is a Democrat. And there is a Democrat running for Congress in the state of Florida. Okay? What the president could do is he can travel to Florida and try to help that other Democrat win the election. He might go down, maybe that candidate's having a rally today, and the president shows up, they take some pictures, he supports that candidate, because everyone knows who the president is. And so by showing up, the president is trying to help his fellow Democrat win the election. Okay? So that's one of the things that the president does as chief of party. What is one of the main things he does as chief legislator? I skipped over this. He does it every year. Chief legislator.
He goes out and speeches.
The annual speech.
The speech he makes, the State of the Union address. When the president makes the State of the Union address every year, he's chief legislator because he's proposing laws. And then the last one
Chief citizen.
was chief
Citizen.
He represents
citizen.
all the
Hold
people.
on, guys. Y'all get I ain't even done writing chief citizen because as you can tell, my handwriting's super. Okay? Chief citizen.
Represents all people.
He represents people. And as we said here, typically he does this by when disasters happen or when bad events happen. If the president shows up, then he is showing his support. He's just helping represent and comfort the people. Okay? Even if the people didn't vote for him, he still shows up to show support, to try to help the people get through tough times. Today's 9/11. Okay, a big event happened about 18 years ago on this day. President Bush, who was president at the time, days after this happened, he went to New York City and he thanked the firefighters and the police officers who went to where the event happened to show his support. Okay? No, it doesn't make up the fact that people were killed and all that, but it does help the country by him showing that the president cares. Okay, and all presidents typically do this when some bad event happens, whether it's a hurricane or some type of a shooting, violent activity. If the president shows up to show his support, then it makes the people feel better. That at least they know the president cares. And when he does those types of things, chief citizen. Okay, so everything the president does kind of falls into one of these 7 categories. The ones that I put on my test, I know we're there. There is a question about chief legislator on the test. I believe there's one about chief diplomat on the test. I have seen a question about chief of party, about the president trying to help someone of his or her party win an election. Okay? I know those have shown, Commander-in-Chief shows up a lot. You might see something about the military. It wants to know what role the president is it when, he's controlling the military. Okay? Typically in the past, this has been a section that students don't always get. We get confused on some of these because there are a lot of them. There's 7 of these. You have to try to know them apart plus all the other stuff. Okay? So make sure you kind of know these 7 roles and what they do, especially those right there. Any questions about any of those?
No.
Everybody good? Think you understand what you need to know for the test. SOL 6 is a very big test.
Yes.
It doesn't count any more than the other tests, but again, this information helps us get through SOL 7 and SOL 8. Okay? Because once we get to SOL 7, you know the governor does a lot of these same things. The governor of Virginia, we're going to go over this again. The governor does a lot of these things. When we get to SOL 7, we're going to be talking about powers of the executive branch. The only thing that's going to be different is we don't call it a president in Virginia.
We call it a governor.
Call it a governor. The governor's job is going to be very similar. The same thing goes for the legislative branch. The only difference is in Virginia, we don't call the legislative branch Congress.
We call it the Virginia General Assembly.
Call it a General Assembly. But the jobs and the powers are going to be very similar. So if you know it now, if you can learn it in SOL 6, it's going to make getting through SOL 7 and 8 a lot easier for you. Okay? Any questions about that? We come back, we'll play Kahoot and go over that. No questions? All right, let's take a bathroom break.